President Biden is facing his first Supreme Court, is going to pick his first Supreme Court justice after Justice Stephen Breyer's retirement announcement yesterday. It gives the president a chance to fulfill his campaign promise to put the first Black woman on the Supreme Court. Here's a look at some of the possible nominees. Names like Ketanji Brown-Jackson and Leondra Kruger are at the top of the list. If Biden follows through, his pick would be the third Black justice and the sixth woman in the court's history of more than 230 years. So when asked if Biden intends to keep that promise, here's what White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said yesterday.
Well, I've commented on this previously. The president has stated and reiterated his commitment to nominating a Black woman to the Supreme Court and certainly stands by that.
Jen Psaki speaking yesterday. So here with me now is Greg Stohr. He is Bloomberg News Supreme Court reporter. Greg, so glad we could have you because there's a lot to get to. We just mentioned a few of the names that are floating out there. Talk to us about maybe who are top on the list for President Biden right now, if he does keep that promise that he made on the campaign trail. And there's a lot of people who are calling for him to keep that promise.
Yeah, every indication that he will. You heard Jen Psaki yesterday reiterating that he would. And he benefits from the fact that he has now nominated 8 women of color, 8 Black women to federal appeals courts as president. So the bench has gotten deeper. And one of those names is Ketanji Brown-Jackson, who is now on the powerful federal appeals court here in D.C. She was confirmed with 3 Republican votes in June, I believe. And she has been right in the thick of some of the fights over Donald Trump and efforts by him and his aides to insulate themselves from congressional inquiries. She's building a record. She interviewed with Biden before she got that spot on the D.C. circuit. And by all indications, he was impressed by her.
And Greg, do we know when the president will make this official? I mean, we still haven't heard yet from Stephen Breyer, but there's reports that they may have an event today. What are we potentially going to hear? What is it that you're going to be looking out for when they both do speak?
Well, first of all, confirmation about the time frame of this. This is an unusual time for a Supreme Court justice to announce a retirement. Usually they wait closer to the end of the term. Indications is that Justice Breyer will announce that he's going to retire at the end of the term, so late June, early July, something like that, and that the White House and congressional Senate Democrats are going to move very quickly to go ahead and confirm a successor who will then be ready to go, maybe sitting around for a few months, waiting for the end of the term for Justice Breyer to finally retire. So the time frame I'm certainly looking on. And of course, we'll all be looking to hear again from the president himself that he is going to fulfill that promise to nominate the first Black woman to the Supreme Court.
Greg, what do you make of the time frame? I mean, of course, we're in a midterm election year. You mentioned the end of the term is June. Had that been the case, it could have been a repeat of what we saw in 2020. Do you think all of those calculations are maybe going into what President Biden and Supreme Court Justice Stephen Breyer are thinking? And do you think the potential, if someone like Ketanji Brown is nominated, will we see the same sort of partisan back and forth, considering she did have Republicans support her to her federal court nomination?
No question, it will be a very divisive fight. Democrats, of course, have the votes. They don't need a Republican support as long as they stick together. Very interesting to me, Democrats indicated yesterday, we have a story out by my colleague Laura Litvan, indicated that they're going to try to move the nominee through in just 30 days. That's the same time frame that Republicans used for Amy Coney Barrett just before the election. Historically, that is very short, but Democrats obviously think there's precedent for that now. It would let them get the nominee through with less time for opponents to take shots at her, to find reasons to stir up opposition. And, potentially at a rough political time for President Biden, this could give him a significant political win.
Who of the names that we've talked about, Greg, would help President Biden advance his agenda and also help Democrats? Because those are two things that are potentially plaguing the president and Democrats more broadly this year. Well,
from a substantive standpoint, any of the names that are being talked about would help the president kind of reinforce the liberal base on the Supreme Court. In terms of the kind of the shorter term politics of it, you might see a bit of a divide between Ketanji Brown Jackson, maybe looked at as a little more of a progressive, and somebody like Leondra Kruger, justice on the California Supreme Court, is known as a little more of an incrementalist, a very careful jurist who adheres to precedent out there, sometimes has sided with the prosecution in criminal cases. She might be seen as a little more of a moderate. That being said, any of the names being mentioned, assuming they are, come off well in the hearings and Democrats rally around them, would give the president that sort of political win, certainly bolster his standing among core Democrats and African Americans.
And in the next term, Greg, what are the top cases that this next justice is going to be hearing? Because that's going to play into their confirmation hearing, right? I mean, we're going to hear a lot of politicians asking sort of where they'd side, progressive or not.
Yeah, well, the big one that we just found out the other day, this week, that the court's going to hear is a bid to overturn race-conscious college admissions, affirmative action at the University of North Carolina and Harvard College. That would overturn a precedent from more than 20 years ago, or from about 20 years ago. And that'll certainly be a marquee case. And given that this is going to be in all likelihood, the first female justice, there will probably be extra attention on that case. But the court's got to have a big agenda. We don't really know what's all on that yet. There's a big Clean Water Act case they agreed to hear. There's plenty of time for the court to fill that out. And so far, what we're seeing with this Supreme Court, as in abortion and other contexts, is that they are being pretty aggressive about taking up cases that are really going to shift the law to the right.
And Greg, I mean, I think we have to end on the fact that this would be significant no matter who the pick is, if it is a Black woman. But she would not be the first on the Supreme Court. What do we know sort of about the precedent that trailblazers and pioneers have on the Supreme Court? I mean, I think of someone like Justice Sonia Sotomayor, who still sits on the court. She's the first Latina. I mean, how have these people who we're now looking at on our screen sort of shaped how justices rule on big cases like you just mentioned?
Well, they're of course all different individuals. Their presence alone certainly makes a difference. You have Sandra Day O'Connor on there. She certainly became a role model for all sorts of people, but especially young women who were interested in the law. Sonia Sotomayor, as you said, was a trailblazer for Latina women and Latinos more generally. Their presence alone makes a big difference. One other thing that we've not mentioned, though, is that the person who joins the court could bring a different kind of experience as well. So Ketanji Brown Jackson does have a track record as a public defender, served on the U.S. Sentencing Commission, and those are experiences that nobody on the court has right now. So that would also bring a new element to the court.
Really great analysis, Greg. And we have to mention, you have a SCOTUS gumball machine. I think that is something that not a lot of people probably have.
I'm glad you noticed it. Yes, indeed. It's called Supreme Court Justices. It was given to me by a friend, and it works great for shots on Quicktake.
Right, and for this discussion that we had this morning. Greg, thank you so much for joining us. Greg Stohr, Supreme Court reporter and also exclusive owner of a gumball machine. Thanks so much.